Hi, welcome, welcome everyone. Thank you. I'm going to start with just a couple words about the purpose of this call and the outcomes, and then I'm going to say my introduction. We'll turn it over to the group for introductions, and then I will really just be serving as a moderator so that you all can have a platform for discussion. So why, when I was talking to Jennifer about offering this kind of a roundtable, you know, it occurred to me that fundraising, it's a relationship building kind of activity, but it's very data driven, right? We're always looking at using metrics to apply to past efforts to determine the success of our fundraising work and also to forecast what we plan to raise in the future. And here we are in this new time where the data from previous years and previous engagement opportunities is not really very useful right now. And we're having to begin to test some new things and go in there a little bit in the dark because we don't really know what's going to happen. I see Sarah's joining us right now. Hello, welcome, Sarah. I'm Calliope, and I'm going through a little bit about the purpose and outcome of the call. So right now, a lot of us are kind of moving through our initiatives without historical data to reference, and also because this is such an unprecedented situation we're in, there are no real definitive resources out there who can say, here's what you need to do right now, and this is what is proven to work, right? So I wanted to provide a platform for other fundraising professionals to share what is and isn't working. I hope that you'll leave this session really with two things. One is validation for what you're currently doing or not doing, and also some insight and inspiration to actually try some new things that other folks are doing and have said might work, right? I know we have no definitive answers, and I'm sure a lot of this is very specific to some of our organizations, but I think that coming together and having a really candid conversation is a good place to start and a good way to deal with a lot of this uncertainty. We're going to do introductions. I'm actually going to share my screen so that you can see some of the prompts that I have. But basically, in about 60 seconds, we're going to say our name, our title and organization. And kind of the two things I want to start with are, what are you struggling with? Basically, how can we help? And also, where are you finding success? So what do you have to offer? And as I'm getting that pulled up on the screen, I will start with mine. So I'm Calliope Glaros. I am a consultant with an organization called Philanthropy Without Borders. So I'm not currently working in the trenches as a development officer. I work with a lot of different clients. And so I'm here to help facilitate and kind of moderate this table, but I really want it to be a platform for those of you who are in the trenches right now, having to modify and adjust your fundraising plans. Right now, I'm struggling with forecasting, right? As I said, we don't have historical data that is very relevant in this era, and it's hard to know when we try something new, how successful are we going to be? How can we project, revenue going forward from those efforts? So if anyone here has some resources they've used to do forecasting or some variables that they're looking at, I think it would be worth sharing. Where we're succeeding, for the past 2 months, I've been helping a lot of clients with virtual events, and we've seen really high levels of engagement and also really cool, innovative things come out of those. And so if anyone wants some ideas about ways to virtually engage your donors, either in group or one-on-one, I'm happy to talk about those as well. I'd like to turn it over now to Andrea for the next introduction.
Great, thanks, Calliope. My name's Andrea Johnson. I'm the Executive Director at Green Empowerment. I'm mostly struggling with how to resource fundraising and communications going forward. We had a strategy this year that we put a lot of work into that was all based on a new staff member who's no longer with us, unrelated to COVID, but a lot of it was her putting together an engagement plan that was almost all face-to-face engagement, which we knew prior to this was a gap for the organization. So as I'm thinking about the future and what engagement looks like, how to resource it is something I'm struggling with, because I think the world just looks different, like Calliope is saying, but also when it comes to where our revenue is going to come from, like how do we continue to engage our individual donors that are longtime supporters when we recognize, while also recognizing that that those numbers are likely not going to be the same moving forward. And then where are we succeeding? I would say we're in the middle, we're finishing up right now, a pretty successful virtual campaign where we transitioned our annual benefit dinner to a virtual campaign. So I'm happy to share kind of what I think made that experience work. It looks like, taking out board contributions, because we have annual board pledges, but taking out board contributions, we're about to net almost exactly the same as the previous 2 years, or even more than 2018, it looks like, because we don't have the same costs associated with hosting an event. So that's something we succeeded in. So I feel like we're succeeding in the immediate term, and we're challenged maybe with the future. Like our responses right now are good, but how we actually build this out for the future is challenging, to summarize.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to Jim.
Hi, my name is Jim Presnell, and I'm the executive director for These Numbers Have Faces. And I would kind of concur with you, Calliope, forecasting in this situation. So at this point, we're hanging in there financially. We had postponed our April spring campaign. We just started it this last week. We used April to just call donors to check in with them and see how they're doing and adjusting to the new reality of the pandemic. And that was really, really good. So I would say that was kind of our success, was that relationship building and relationship nurturing in April, just telling them we're setting aside fundraising. We just want to know how you are. We had some great conversations. But now we're doing okay with the spring campaign. After 1 weekend, we're at 25% of our goal. It remains to be seen how we'll end. But underscoring where Andrea is at, I think we're okay in the short term, but it's the longer term and forecasting and scenario planning. I'm doing some scenarios now that I think becomes the challenge.
Thank you. I'm going to move to Jaya. Am I saying your name right? If you want to go ahead. Sorry about that.
It's all right. My name is Jaya. I'm used to mispronunciation. It's my life. I am the major event specialist at Medical Teams International, and I have a counterpart who is based out of Seattle. So the two of us are the events team for Medical Teams International. What are we struggling with? I would say our biggest struggle is we've had a few virtual events. We're positioning to move all of our events virtual, and some of our smaller events have gone well, and the organization is excited about that and they want to do more. And we have these other larger events that we're planning, and so it's scalability. And there are just two of us, and we're having to learn how to do a completely different event model. So that's probably our biggest struggle. The first, month of quarantine was spent researching all the different kinds of events we could have and what does pivoting look like. And we were ready to go virtual within 2 weeks. And it took the organization about 6 weeks to finally agree to the fact that events would not happen. We have a large event in Seattle that usually has about 800 people that's held on T-Mobile Park's field. That would have been June 6th. It was pushed back thinking we could have it in August. It's now going to be virtual in August. We used to have a big gala in Portland, and we had sunset that last year, just had already decided. And then we have some fundraising luncheons for the fall. So we have all of these different events that now, what we're succeeding at, I would say, as I had mentioned, we've done these smaller Zoom gatherings with our closest donors, and those have been a phenomenal success. Our donors want to know what we're doing. They want to be supporting us. They want to have, an environment to be meeting with the president and other executives that they would not normally have that environment. And so it's drawing those donors closer. And I would definitely encourage all of you, as you're, saying, what does it look like going forward? Our donors are still there, and they really want, our mission hasn't changed, right? Our goals haven't changed. Someone may not be able to give at the same level, but I mean, the passion is there and they want to support us, and we need to not stay away from, say, oh, we don't want to ask you, because I think that's, our mission is still there. So they would question, where did we go? What happened to us? So, I mean, we've had some successes. We've researched a lot on different types of events and event software and all of that. So I can, on the event side of things, I can offer that.
Excellent. Thank you, Jaya. Great to hear some of those successes. Can we go to Andrew?
Clark, the executive director with. I think we're going to start to echo some similar threads. It's really the long-term scenario planning, being relatively in a secure position for 2020, but what the philanthropy will evolve into looking into 2021 and beyond. As well as how to balance that line of communication, respecting that donors want aware of the work and the impact that we're having, but balancing the very real psychological implication over inundated with messaging. So trying to find that balance, I think, is our biggest struggle. The success obviously being people have stayed engaged, actually upping their engagement of opening more lines of dialogue, asking for more update. So definitely creating a much more fluid line of communication, which has been, I think, a very positive outcome.
Great, thank you so much. I want to move to the next person that's on my screen, but I don't know your name. It's the email, gncraig@gmail.com.
Hi.
Welcome.
Yes, I'm Guillaume Craig. I'm the senior advisor on program development with Blue Energy. So I work with Andrew. Formerly was the country director of our programs in Nicaragua. So I work mostly on like project formulation and program design more than the direct donor-facing relationships. So we've been struggling a bit in the development team in terms of just looking at our activities as well and trying to find strategies that will allow us to continue to run the programs and operate. And then we're thinking through right now how to reformulate some of the project activities and then renegotiate with current project donors adjustments to the operational strategies and budget adjustments. So far we've been, I think, successful as a team thinking through and adapting to the challenges with our local team on the ground. And I lived 15 years in Nicaragua, so quite close to the ground reality in terms of adjusting that. And I do some of the bridging there, thinking through what the donors might want to hear and understand, because they're in the global north, and how do we communicate what our local team thinks is feasible operationally, and how can we safely execute things, and then how can we successfully communicate that to the donors and get approvals of our adjustment strategies.
Great, thank you. We're going to move to Sarah.
Hi, yeah, my name's Sarah Cinquini. I am the stewardship director at ALSO, but it stands for Advocates for Life Skills and Opportunities. We support and advocate for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in their workplace, in their homes, and in the community. And we got a little lucky in that we actually I was brought on, and we they suspended all fundraising development for the year to do a big overhaul. So we actually had a lot of strategic planning in place. So we've really used this time really working on our messaging, our voice, revisiting the donor base. We have, I would say the struggle for us right now would be our donor base is considerably older, definitely baby boomer. And as we move into more of a technology donor development world, that is, we're really wanting to focus on that and really delve into what that looks like. And then also at the same time, why don't we have a younger donor base, and as we just like explore this messaging piece, really hone in on that as well. So we are succeeding in that we're following through with our goals. And we had our first ideation session with an amazing, we call her our Jedi trainer, the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. She's super awesome. If anyone needs a referral, I would, like, mind blowing. It was amazing. Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. So it's kind of an exciting time for us. We feel kind of lucky that this all just kind of happened at the same time. And that we are not as stressed, I think, as a lot of our counterparts are, just in terms of pivoting. We haven't had to do a lot of that yet.
Great, thank you, Sarah. I want to move to Caitlin.
We might have lost.
Oh, we might have lost Caitlin. We've got another person on the call whose name I don't know. Tracy, excellent. Tracy, are you with us?
Yes, hello. Whoops, I'm here. I too am with Medical Teams International, like Jaya, and I work in corporate relations. So I would say what we're struggling with a little bit at this point, we are responding to COVID-19. And so we had a great interaction with our corporate donors initially. We're still trying to do that, but it's becoming a little bit more challenging because things have stabilized to some degree, and so we don't have a lot of fresh messaging for them to keep them engaged. And so I would say that's a little bit of a challenge now. Where are we succeeding? I think, I guess just what we've done so far has been successful as far as keeping donors in the loop. They do want to know what's going on, but like Andrew said, it's finding that balance so that we're not bombarding them, but we do want to keep them engaged.
Great, thank you so much. Last introduction, Jennifer.
I keep leaving myself on mute. Hi, I'm Jennifer Miller. I'm the initiative lead at Global PDX. And first of all, we just want to say a huge thank you to Calliope, who's leading this session. She's always incredible. I think I came into this not knowing quite where my issues are, but hearing you guys speak, I a little bit better know. And I think our main struggle right now is that we knew our value was so based in events that it took us a while to learn or to realize that we had a lot of value other places too, that we had kind of been neglecting before because events were working so well, both in bringing in new people and new faces, and also kind of having that be our selling point to our potential funders. Is events is what we do, which kind of leads into what I think our successes have been, which is that we were so small at Global PDX, we were able to pivot pretty quickly and make a lot of changes. And while we're still really implementing those, I think that's been a success.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. I see Caitlin's back with us. Last person for an introduction.
Yeah, hi, sorry, my internet cut out. Yeah, I'm Caitlin Bissett. I am the development director at Bridges to Change. I would say that so we're fairly new to actually like having fundraising and development, and so this year was kind of supposed to be our launching off year. So we were going to do a film festival, and part of that was going to be our first annual event, which we're both going to take place in September. And we've kind of made the decision this week that those are probably not going to happen in person. So the hard thing I think for us is that we're not in a place where we have like a recurring schedule of events that people are used to going to. So that's, in my mind, a little hard to like wrap my head around how we can like start engaging people from a virtual platform versus having done events already and just transitioning them into something virtual. And so, I mean, the areas that we've had success is just through like digital engagement through social media right now, which is kind of like our main way of getting in contact with people out in the community. And then also just writing different kind of relief grants has actually brought in a fair amount of revenue for us given our mission. So, yeah.
Great, thank you so much. So by now we've gotten to hear from everyone on the call. Thank you all for sharing. I want to turn it over to you now. Have any questions emerged? Is there anything that you'd like to ask the group now that you sort of know who's here and where they're succeeding and where some of our shared challenges are? Yeah, Andrea.
I was wondering about the medical team's international example of doing kind of Zoom gatherings. And I was wondering, when you're creating like the invite and target list, are you doing a really targeted group of people? You're saying like, hey, this group of 6, or is it just open, or is it some combination of those?
So we've done 3 different events. 2 of them were the same and one was different. So one of them kind of would play more into what Kaylin was talking about, where it was to a group that we have called Healthy Women, Healthy World, which is, we have gatherings a couple times a year, but it's not a set schedule. We try to meet 4 times a year if we can. So we did a virtual webinar, basically, you know, where we said, we hosted it as a webinar. We published it to, or reached out to pretty much our entire database. Primarily, you know, at first point, it was directed to those that are in that subset, and said, we're having this webinar. This is what the format's going to be. And we did a registration because we wanted to know who was going to be attending. Are we going to have 5 people? Will we have 500? That helped us. We chose to put a donation button on the form, which we don't normally ask for any money to come to the events, nor take donations at the event. And we raised, just from having the donation button, $375, which we were really excited about because we wouldn't have had that. And we had 140 people register, and 100 people came to the webinar on Zoom, and 20 people through Facebook Live. So it exceeded our wildest dreams because our in-person events range from 10 to 20 people. Mm-hmm. So far and above anything we expected. The second version of the type of event we have is a very targeted, very specific donor invitation only type of event, where we sent the invitation to, I mean, like, this number is not going to seem exclusive, but it was to 80 people trying to get a group of about 20. And that's what we acquired both times. So we sent about 80, 90 invitations out and invited them, and we used Zoom again. And it was more of a Zoom meeting, like this type of structure, where we all came in as a group on the same plenary all together, did an introduction, and then we broke into breakout rooms. So it would be like going to a table, a dinner table, and then had conversations within those tables. And that's where they were able to sit and listen to different staff members share about our programs, get updates on what we're actively doing, ask questions that they wouldn't normally have that opportunity to. And that was a much smaller group, right? And then we did personal thank you cards right after that were sent out, and then we're going to reach out to each person, you know, asking them, you know, on just how they're doing and where they're at in including us in their giving for the year.
That's great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Could you send out, sorry. Oh,
I was just curious, how long were each of, like, an hour? Was everything an hour?
Yeah, so the webinar was about an hour, because just figuring from an attention time, I think we publicized it as about an hour and 15 minutes. We gave 15 minutes on the front end for people to log in, make sure their technology worked. The program itself was right at an hour, and then we went into a Q&A after. But again, the program was publicized as an hour. The smaller breakout room environment, that was an hour and a half, because again, they came in, had an introductory meeting, then they went into their breakout rooms for about 50 minutes, and then they came back and we had a little closing.
Did they stay in the same breakout room the whole time, or did they rotate? Okay, cool.
No, they stayed in the same breakout room, but we had different speakers come and speak to them.
Oh, nice.
So the speakers left, and then the individuals stayed in their room.
Gotcha.
Andrea, you were going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to ask a little bit about when you were promoting it to people, how much of the format you shared about the breakout rooms, because I feel like that to a lot of our donors would be really appealing, like having a smaller conversation. Whereas like if you said webinar to some of our supporters, they'd be like, oh, that's intimidating. So I just wasn't sure if that was pretty laid out.
No, it was very laid out. It was this, come join us. And again, most of the people that were in the smaller breakout rooms, I would guess the average age was probably 60. I mean, I was really impressed. I've been very impressed with our donor base that they're embracing technology like they never have before. Because if we had asked them previously to attend something like this, no, they never would have. But now they're really anxious because they want to support us. They want to hear what we're doing, how we're responding. And so they'll figure out the technology, and with just the culture of what's happening right now, right? They're on Zoom with their grandkids, or they have to for work. So where people would never have embraced this concept, I think it will continue in the future, even after life returns to maybe some personal events, that we would continue to do something like this. And yeah, we did say, come be in this small group where you would not normally get to talk to the president of the organization.
Yeah, I was gonna say my 89-year-old grandma uses Zoom now. It's awesome.
I'm curious, have all of you basically canceled all of your in-person events and major donor travel, that kind of thing, for the rest of 2020? Or are you projecting even out to 2021 to be doing something different?
I think for us, we've never been very good at events. We had one event a year, not necessarily large attendance and not necessarily a big impact on donor giving. And we, pre-COVID, we had pretty much made a decision not to put energy into that, but to put energy into the two campaigns. And we might add a third smaller campaign, but the two campaigns that really drive individual giving for us. And yeah, we're at this point, we're not thinking about events, although with one exception. We've talked about, as after the spring campaign is done, we've talked about doing a Zoom meeting for major donors who gave to the spring campaign, so a small group, a Zoom meeting with our managing director in Rwanda, so they get to have a conversation with her firsthand about what life's been like, what the challenges have been, and how our students are doing. So rather than hearing it from us Mzungu, they get to hear it from her directly.
Great, thank you, Jim. Anyone else? With all the 2020 cancellations, no major donor meetings, no work travel.
Correct. Through at least the end of this year for us.
Yeah, and I'm curious, I know forecasting is an issue for everyone, but a lot of these initiatives are really tied into revenue goals, right? And what have your leaders been saying? Are they anticipating revenue going down? And if so, by how much? Or are they still holding you accountable to certain revenue goals? It seems like a lot of us were doing okay right now, but I also think the ramifications of this haven't fully played out enough yet.
I feel comfortable sharing that to start maybe. So for individual donors, I just did an updated budget where I'm projecting just 50% of individual contributions from the later events that we would have. So we just hit our target goal for the spring benefit dinner virtual campaign. But I think that some of that may have been some of our donors that give later, kind of giving now, that don't often attend it. And I'm just not feeling confident as the rest of the year plays out that we'll hit the targets. I think that there's this a little bit of like sense of urgency and people feel like wanting to feel useful and engaged right now. But as there's a little bit of acceptance, and this is true in my personal family's life, right? Like as we are accepting that this is our new normal, like we're just like we're going through a different process. So I'm not thinking that the level of engagement that we've had, that while it has been successful, I don't know if we can really sustain it from a revenue, like I think from a keeping people informed and engaged perspective, but converting that engagement to revenue, I think is just going to be harder.
I agree with Andrea. Like I've actually had that concern. I've had several bigger major donors who have given considerable amounts recently, but I count on those later. And so I'm wondering, oh, is this in response to now, but they'll still give? I haven't had those conversations yet. I really have been thinking about how best to have those conversations with a few select people, for sure.
I think for us, we have a fair number of monthly donors, and they've been really stable. We've only had 2 people, and they were relatively small amounts, say, "Oh, I'm unemployed right now. Our work is such, and I'm going to have to pause our giving for now." And we've had 3 other donors give fairly substantial amounts, totaling almost $2,000. Saying there are probably going to be some people who can't give right now. We want to fill the gap. So that's been wonderful. For me, I guess the 2 things I'm wanting to look at is how does this spring campaign go for us in May? How close do we get to what we've gotten in the past years? I'm kind of encouraged to hear, Andrea and a couple of you say, hey, we're at least close to what we've done in the past in the short term. Where I'm a little bit nervous is we have probably our biggest donor gives every year in December about $40,000, and whether or not that person can still give this year that amount, I don't know yet, and I don't know that he knows yet. He's a business owner, and he doesn't know where he's going to come out. And he's a strong supporter, so the heart's there. That's not the issue. It's just what will his revenue be like by the end of the year in terms of him being able to give. And that single donor would have a huge impact on our profit loss. So I think that's the thing that makes me nervous, is just the things we don't know yet. And there's no way to know yet. There's just not enough data, right?
Great, thank you, Jim. Andrew or Guillaume at Blue Energy, how are you sort of forecasting and dealing with all the variables you don't know?
I think from our perspective, we're really just focusing more at the moment on the operational adaptations that we need to make. Particularly given that some of the fees where we're located are the disjointed national responses, making that our primary focus, so that when we do go back to re-engage with donors, either through special requests or just maintaining continuity with them, we're coming forward with a strong plan. I think the biggest challenge is really identifying where those landmarks are, where we can start defining the scenario planning, right? We can say we need to be doing these scenario plannings, we need these updates, but because of the fluidity of the situation, and where's the go, no-go point? At what point do you go deep into some of the scenarios versus staying at a high and hoping that something will shake out by the end of that? So for us, again, it's really about going back in the plan for the year, understanding where we're at, what types of adaptations we're going to need to make, so that when we do go back and make these conversations, we have something tangible in place, even if we don't answer questions that we're asking, and asking for input and trying to understand how that works within larger landscape.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm curious, Jaya and Tracy, kind of what kinds of, I guess, adaptations, as Andrew was saying, are you seeing beyond like just pivoting the events to a virtual format? How is the organization doing some scenario planning? In the back of my mind, I'm thinking about an organization that I know of that's quite large that is looking back at 2018 or 2008 at the recession and seeing, what their revenue loss was then and anticipating that we're going to go into another sort of that the economy in the next couple of years will look like that, and is starting to make like decisions about laying off and things like that, which is strange right now because actually they're doing quite well financially. It's just that they anticipate in a year from now they won't be. And so I'm sort of curious how, what the kind of the variables are that people are looking at in order to do some of this scenario planning.
I can take it if I don't see Tracy unmuting. So I would say that kind of the scenario that you're talking about, from assessing past years, what it looked like in 2008, 2009, part of our issue is we're a worldwide organization with operations in multiple countries that we normally are sending staff back and forth to, that we can't right now. And if there's a natural, some kind of a major natural disaster, right now we wouldn't be able to respond, which is part of our model because the world is on lockdown. The UN's working right now on beginning to outline what travel could look like for humanitarian, but it's challenging. So we do have some savings in the sense that we don't have staff traveling back and forth and being in those countries. And overall expenses are down, market is down, so we just had a meeting this morning where they, on a monthly basis, are assessing our income versus our revenue, where do we have cost savings, and then doing scenario planning to how does this compare to 10 plus years ago, and wanting to make sure that we are not too slow to respond. But I mean, when things first happened, we were having weekly all company meetings on just kind of the state of what the organization was doing, how we were responding, keeping people very informed. And our workloads have probably increased, not decreased, through all of this. So for most of us, we have a decent amount of job security, obviously, as long as the funding continues. But I get the sense, I mean, this morning I really got the sense that every day our finance team is truly assessing all of our expenses. We're not being frivolous in any decision that's being made. And first and foremost is, how do we preserve all of our staff? Because we are one of the most valuable resources, right? And so we need each individual to be able to respond to do the work that we want to do. I don't know if that helps answer it at all, but I mean, I would just say it's consistent, assessment every day.
I think to build on that a little bit, like one of the things that I'm constantly thinking about is we also, like somebody said, like we don't want to think that we went away. So like, how do we maintain that engagement and that storytelling? Because that also is what's going to help our organizations beyond this. So like, we need a certain amount of immediate response mode. It sounds like everybody's kind of doing that pretty well, at least some of my peers I've talked to as well. But it's also like, we're still here. This work is, I mean, especially what Medical Teams International is doing, right? Like this work is just as important as ever. So how do you, if you start to do too much scenario planning and get rid of things, then also you're not going to be able to like sustain through it. And that's, I think, the fine balance where some of these donor engagements and events fit in, right? Where it's like, I'm just getting to a point as the executive director where I'm like, I'm actually kind of comfortable if we don't make as much money on some of these things this year, because I think the continued engagement is important. Like we've been around for 25 years. We don't just say like, like I think we can weather this. I think our model makes sense. So that's also why, but it's like, we have to still be showing up for people. And also I hope, the cheesy side of my passion for this is like, I hope it highlights some positive stories right now. Like the world needs some positive stories And those are still happening in some of our organizations. So.
Yeah, I would just say the planning horizon is much shorter right now. So instead of forecasting 12 months out, we're shifting more to 3, maybe 6 months out.
Mm-hmm.
Just doing that constant reassessment and looking for new sources of funding, because some of our donors aren't, like someone else said, aren't able to donate right now. So looking for, in our case, new foundations or new corporate donors who might be able to fill the gap.
And I think that the foundations and corporate donors, depending on the sector of the economy they're in and how much of a hit they're taking right now, those become challenging in their own right too. Yeah. This morning Andrea and I were in another call and with some colleagues, executive directors, and one was making the comment that as foundations take a hit in the stock market, they're just not going to be able to give as much. And what impact is that going to have on us as nonprofits? And yeah, if individual donor giving is going down and you're trying to make it up in other ways, but those other areas are just as challenged, then it becomes all the more challenging, I think. And again, we don't know yet what's going to happen. So,
has anyone found success in getting new donors at this time? I know it's so hard because you have to have so many touch points, right? For someone to go from, a prospect to a donor, and that can be a very long process. But I'm curious if anyone has seen successes in new or different individuals or entities engaging in this time.
We've had not a large number, but we've had 3 or 4 people who had stopped giving to us who have restarted giving. And that's been a blessing. And then there's been another person that actually came to me as we were given by the Murdoch Trust 5 hours of free coaching and mentoring. And so I was given a business leader in the greater metro area to kind of be my coach and mentor for 5 months. And that's developed into a really positive relationship. And with every phone call, we've had 3 now, I have another one tomorrow, but with every phone call, that person has gotten more engaged and ended up giving a sizable gift, gave $1,000 2 weeks ago. So yeah, I mean, it's not big numbers, but there are those positive anecdotal stories that say this is not necessarily all doom and gloom.
I think, yeah, the opportunities of different types of engagement have been really interesting. Like we did a call out for face masks. We had a goal of about 1,500 to then distribute to people who needed, like people with disabilities that needed them, who didn't have access to them, especially for their support workers. And the cool thing is we had a goal of about 1,500. We're like reaching 3,000 and it's not stopping. Like it's been really cool. And people who've never really been engaged, and then other people have been like, oh, I know this person who sews, and now they're engaged. So now it's just kind of this cool, we're sending out, the thank you cards and having personal conversations. So it's been a really cool new type of engagement with a lot of people.
And I would say, with kind of responding to what Andrea had said earlier, as far as stories, positive stories. I mean, having the opportunity to share your stories in the community with uplifting now, especially now, I think we're all very tired of COVID news. I mean, we're still absorbing it, but who doesn't love to hear a positive story and to take and build on that? If you have the opportunity to just be sharing those messages out to the community, because we want those. I mean, we want to find those opportunities, and know that there is a lot of good going on in the world that we're not getting glimpses of, and learning how your beneficiaries are doing. I mean, I'm constantly scouring, trying to find those stories because I'm so tired of the news. And I think as a nonprofit, as a group, I mean, we really need to be promoting each other and saying, you know, look at these different organizations that you can be supporting, and look at the good that they're doing in their communities. It's a time that we really all need to be lifting each other up. Somehow we got the BTS Army, which is the K-pop band fan base, somehow chose us as one of their organizations a couple weeks ago to highlight. And so I think we had 400 of their fans that made, you know, small little donations to us, which was very random and out of the ordinary, but that was fun to try to have that tie-in on social media. And then because we do have an active COVID response, we are in a position that we are acquiring some new donors, just because we can let people know. I mean, we're here in the Northwest. We are responding because we're responding in Seattle and Oregon and providing care and testing and things like that. So that's unique kind of to our organization that we're doing that. But I would say the stories that you can share on your organization is the most priceless right now to all of us in the community.
I think one of the things we tried to do a little bit, normally we would create videos of our students and we'd edit them and, you know, put in subtext and all of that. And what we've done instead right now is simply take their selfie videos. We've asked them to describe what life is like for you right now in lockdown in Rwanda. And all of a sudden their personalities come out a little bit more, and the stories are just kind of interesting, and they're short, they're 2 minutes, you know, but we've been posting those on social media and people have been responding. I think the other stories that have come out is in Rwanda, the lockdown has been much tighter than here. Borders are closed. You can't leave Kigali, the capital, or any of the other cities and go out into the rural areas, and rural areas cannot come into the cities. So the travel inside the country is much more limited than what we've had. But out in the rural villages, our students, out of boredom, have found ways to make an impact with their neighbors. You know, there's a little more freedom out in the rural villages, and so they're teaching English, and they're helping elderly people with gardens, and they're finding ways to make a difference in their neighborhoods in the midst of their isolation and their restlessness. And it's kind of been fun to hear those stories and share them. Yeah. So just want to underscore what you're saying, Jaya.
Thank you. You know, we're about at 7 minutes to the hour. I want to begin the process of closing us out because we have a little bit of a large group, but I'd love if we could all go around. I will call on us again. And, you know, in the beginning, I mentioned that I wanted this to be a platform for us to have a conversation. 60 minutes is not enough to go into all of the detail that we want, but I'd love for us to say, you know, something about this that, you know, was validating, or if any new ideas have occurred to you, or things that you think you're going to do a little differently or test out. I'd love to hear that too. Just something that has sort of sparked in you in this last, you know, 50 or so minutes we've been together. I'm going to go to Andrea.
I'll go first. It was really helpful for me to hear about MTI's, like the invitation only small groups, because we launched a legacy giving program. We had a legacy lunch in 2018. We had a legacy lunch last year that a lot of our longtime donors like just loved the opportunity to be together. And I've been just like, I don't know if I can replicate something like that. So what should I do? And I think that was just helpful to hear a little bit more like how you structured it and how you actually used it as an opportunity to maybe give them access. Like for us, I think we could bring in some of our field staff that they want to hear directly from. Like they hear from me, like who else could they hear from? So that just felt like very actionable for me. In addition to the conversation just being validating in terms of like, man, we're all really thinking through things, being creative, but like have similar challenges. Like that's always validating, but that feels like something I might be able to immediately transition into something that I need to figure out. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Jim. Oh, you're muted.
Not anymore. Yeah, I think for me, again, it just reinforced that idea we've been chewing on about that, having that Zoom meeting for major donors, including Scovia from Rwanda, as a way to engage people in a meaningful conversation. And yeah, I would say this conversation has just kind of reinforced that. I would say the second thing is just underscoring the importance of relationships. And it's almost counterintuitive that on the one hand, we're looking at probably decreases in giving and revenue, but it's almost like that's second in importance behind nurturing and managing and stewarding the relationship, regardless of whether people give or not, and making sure that I'm valuing people not for their giving, but for who they are. I just think that's underscored here today. So,
Thank you. Jaya.
I've just loved having all of you hearing, what has happened for each of you, and kind of that we're in this together, right? That community is, because sometimes I do feel alone on, okay, go figure out how you're going to fundraise virtually, and recognizing that we are a team, we can resource each other. And it's just also then exciting to know that we've done some things that we can share, and hope that that can make a difference for each of you, because there has to be good that comes out of all of this. And so knowing that, if we're leading the trail, someone has to do that. So if we have that opportunity, I guess would be something to know that maybe I've given snippets to people, has just made it all worthwhile to me. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. I was going to go in order: Andrew, Guillaume, Sarah, Tracy, Jennifer. If anyone has to jump off right now, though, for a 3 p.m., we can scrap the order. Otherwise, we can go to Andrew if you want to share.
Yeah, I think for me the light at the end of the tunnel through all of this is the challenge to the silos, both internally and the fact that these actions are happening, and looking at how development programmatic space, more of the programmatic space into development, create more of a fluid flow of communication. It makes the entire space more participatory, and much more in, I think, for all of the stakeholders. And for me, that's exciting.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Guillaume, if you'd like to share anything.
Yeah, I mean, what's coming up for me listening to the different perspectives and stories is really, I think the importance we can use social media and IT to kind of connect our donors more directly to the field, what's happening with our staff, and the people, the families we're working with, their personal stories. And I think bridging the divide, everybody's in isolation. So, and Andrew and I had been discussing a couple weeks back, one of our biggest challenges is that really all of our new major individual donors, they basically all come through after a trip to Nicaragua, after meeting the staff, after meeting the families, walking through the neighborhoods and seeing the work actually being done. And then that creates this emotional connection, and then they follow up and they write checks. And how are we going to do that in the next 2 years? And so I think there's even a greater importance of staying very close to our already existing donors, keeping them emotionally engaged through the stories of our people in the field so they feel connected.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah. No, but I really love the actionable item about, we've been on the fence about our open door tours that we hold monthly, about doing it virtually. And I think this really inspired me to like, let's just do it. Because I think like the theme of just like using this opportunity to like continue to steward those relationships. Like I think that's a wasted opportunity if we don't. So I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Sarah. We're going to go to Tracy and Jennifer, and then we are closing out. Oh, Tracy. Oops, you're muted.
My internet was cutting out there. Sorry. Yeah, I'm just inspired by just all the goodness that's being done by all your organizations, and I love that we can share and learn from each other, and just echo that this, the relationships are what count, and staying close to your donors is really important right now, maybe more important than getting new donors. And like Jim said, it's who they are and their commitment to your organization that you want to be honoring and showing gratitude for.
Thank you, Tracy. Jennifer.
I think for me, it's been a really nice sort of kickstart into thinking about fundraising again, because I think we put that on the back burner for too long. So just hearing all you guys talk together and brainstorm and communicate has made me just excited and invigorated to dive back in where I was a little hesitant before, and that's huge. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. So we're at 2 over the hour. I know you have some places to go. If you have any feedback about this, we're thinking about rolling out these kind of roundtable sessions in certain topic areas for members, just to have more of a dialogue, right? I think we're all a little burnt out on like webinars and just kind of listening to other people's ideas, but to be able to sort of talk with colleagues. And so I'm thinking about a couple different formats. Would love to hear your feedback or ideas in the future. Please share them with Jennifer. Looks like a lot of folks in the chat also put their emails. So maybe we can send an email at the end of this, just letting everyone know what our contact info is if we want to keep in touch or reach out. I'm so grateful that you all made time to be here today. And thank you so much for sharing your insight with us. And I look forward to continuing to engage with everyone in Global PDX. Yes, Jennifer?
Just a quick note, if you don't send me your email or use it in the chat, I'm not going to share it. So if you want to stay anonymous, you can. Otherwise, please make sure you do include those for me to share. Thanks, everybody.
You can just share mine, Jennifer.
Please, let's do this again. Yes.
Let's do it again. Thanks so much. You'll hear from me very soon.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.